Okay, I think we are live. Formula One has finally returned to our screens this week as the 2025 season looks to kick off. And joining me this evening to preview the Australian Grand Prix, review some of the news leading up to the start of the season, and give some predictions for the year ahead is Coops and Amy. Good evening, guys. How are you?
Evening, I'm good. How are you?
I am very good. I'm very excited for this one. Coops, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Yes, very, very, very good. It was a long but retrospectively pretty quick winter break, I think. Looking forward to getting into it. Australia is an exciting one to start the season. It's the first time since 2019 that Australia has actually hosted the first race of the season, because obviously 2020 didn't happen in the end, did it? So
Yeah, yeah.
so it has been a while. So before we get into all the good stuff previewing that Australian Grand Prix, we are, of course, Everything F1. You can check us out on all socials, wherever you're getting your socials: Facebook, Instagram, X Threads. You find us at Join EF1. We're on TikTok at EF1 Official. We are also live on YouTube. Come join us over there if you'd like to see our smiling faces present Formula One news to you. You'll find us at Everything F1 over on YouTube as well. Do subscribe and give a like to the video as well if you're watching us over there. You can also check out our website, as always, everythingf1.com, for daily news and articles, which is about to get so busy as we get finally back into the crux of Formula One. We have had some news and articles, of course, over the last couple of weeks as Formula E has been ramping up and been very busy, but we're getting into the fun stuff now. Formula One is back this Sunday. Formula One is back this Sunday, and we are very much looking forward to it. But before we get into the Australian Grand Prix preview, there's a couple of big things that have happened over the past couple of weeks in the lead up, because it wouldn't be the Formula One off season with a little bit of extra news. And I think the big one that we really, really need to talk about is next year there will be 11 teams on the grid. Cadillac have officially been confirmed as the 11th Formula One team. Coops, I'll go straight to you. Good or bad thing? Happy or sad? Delighted or pissed off? How do you feel about Cadillac joining the grid at last?
Well, I mean, it's Andretti without Andretti. It's literally more or less their entry without Michael Andretti as part of the setup. Uh, and when Andretti got blocked, we all said it was a stupid idea and it didn't look good from a Formula One point of view. And they've had conversations and dealt with their issues they had with whatever it is to do with Michael Andretti and finally agreed to let Cadillac in. So more power to it.
Yep. No, I'm personally quite excited for it. I heard some comments either way about, this further over Americanizes Formula One, letting another American team in. I'm not too pushed about that. Andretti have already come out and said that they have no, they feel no Andretti, sorry, Cadillac have already come out and said they feel no pressure to be forced to put an American driver in the car, and certainly Haas have never buckled any sort of pressure like that. I think they're just going to put whoever they think is going to be the fastest driver in the car. Amy, what do you make of this big, big bombshell news?
I love it. I've always wanted another team on the grid. I feel like, especially with the drivers we have to pick from to be on the grid, this is perfect for them. Gives two more seats available. And I just think it's genuinely like quite exciting news. Um, I think it'll be interesting because I have read articles out there where they have said that they may be picking more American drivers anyway, so it might be a good opportunity for American drivers to come into Formula One, although that didn't go so well last time. But maybe that there's an opportunity there for them. But also, it's just great to see an extra two seats on the grid, and I think that's my pure focus on this news, and that's what I'm getting out of it is the fact that there are two more seats for the fantastic lineup we already have, and it'll just add more racing, which is, I guess, what we all really want anyway.
Yep, absolutely. Now a friend of mine did say that, she's a bit concerned about some of the tighter circuits, like having two extra cars which already don't fit in Monaco. In Monaco, will that be a negative thing? There's certainly an argument for that. It's already quite a crowded grid in terms of like the actual space on certain racetracks. The cars are getting a little bit smaller next year, but certainly the tires are getting thinner next year. That should help a little bit. But that's an interesting angle to it as well. But I think overall, I think it's a good thing. It's been a long and arduous process to get them in. And if correct me if I'm wrong, Coops, you probably know this one better than I do. It's 450 million or something like that. Their anti-dilution fund that they're paying to enter the sport, isn't that it? To the rest of the teams.
Oh yeah, it's quite bad. It's I think the Concord agreement had it somewhere down around a couple of 100 million.
Mm,
And the teams went, look, when this was written, we weren't in this situation, everything. I mean, even Alpine last season, who was, I mean, generally speaking, underperforming, had a value of near $1 billion, going by, is it Forbes or whoever it is that works these things out. So, they came to an agreement, that they would pay what they've paid, which, as you say, I think is the 450 million.
mm.
The new Concord agreements are getting discussed this year, and don't be surprised to see the anti-dilution fee to be somewhere around $1 billion. It's just that's what the teams want because this is the value of the sport.
Mm.
So,
Yep. It's a lot of money, but it to me that even further proves like the seriousness of the General Motors are taking this. Andretti already were willing to kind of fork up the cash. It was more the sort of delay on the FIA had them in for a while. It was the Formula One teams kind of letting them in, and this anti-dilution fund sort of sealed the deal in the end. But we can only hope this will go a little bit better, more along the lines of Haas, the last new team to join Formula One, than the last time we had teams join in 2010, where we had the HRT, Lotus, and Virgin, which didn't go particularly well. The only thing noticeable to come out of the three of them coming is that Daniel Ricciardo got his start in Formula One with HRT. But I suppose the interesting thing now is next year's silly season can begin already. Who is going to get those two seats? Formula One themselves put up an article with a couple of potentials. They got Colton Herta, after all of his drama, potentially getting or not getting his super license points for Red Bull. There's also Valtteri Bottas, kind of hiding in the wings of Mercedes this year. Guan Yu Zhou, who's been dumped out but is still in the Ferrari setup. Ferrari obviously will be supplying engines to Cadillac for the next few years. And then Sergio Perez as well, maybe out in the wilderness at the moment. Amy, if you were whoever is going to be in charge of this project, who would your two picks for those seats be? I'm putting you right on the spot here.
I know you have. I think I've seen a lot of articles that Colton Herta may get a seat. I think that is a high possibility for them. They can't. I think as a new team entering, it's going to be really difficult for them to chuck two new rookies in.
Absolutely.
So I do think they need to chuck in a driver that has raced in Formula One before. I do think Bottas is a really good option for that, and if he is, because he's at Mercedes this year anyway, I think he can bring all of his knowledge to them, and I think that would be very beneficial for them as a team. But I don't know who I would put in. If you like for names wise, I don't know if I can give you any names, but it'll just be nice to kind of see. It would be nice to see an American on the grid, and I know that's kind of controversial because I know people don't necessarily like the Americanization of Formula One, but we lost Logan Sargent, and as the sport is growing in America, hopefully we can get an American driver for the fans over there, and I think that would actually be really, really that would suit the team. But yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they miss a trick not coming in with an American driver. I think Colton Herta, Pat O'Ward, I know he's not American, but he is extremely popular and very, very quick. Has been excellent in IndyCar the past while. He is on McLaren's books. He has tested Formula One cars. He's been in and around the world. He could maybe be a shout as well if they're looking from that side of the pond. Coops, who would you be putting in the presumably black or gold Cadillacs next season?
Bottas would probably be the most logical. I mean, I wouldn't write off Sergio Perez.
Interesting.
He couldn't handle Red Bull. Now, how many drivers have handled being second fiddle to Max Verstappen in a car that's pretty much designed for Max Verstappen?
Mm.
And then when Perez was in your Force India, which is it was a newish team midfield, kind of an underdog style team, he was able to be Sergio Perez. Now we've done this for years, and drivers don't forget how to drive.
Mm.
Sometimes the evolution of Formula One gets to a point where they just can't adapt to the style, and I think that's where Ricciardo was with these previous previous iterations of Formula One. Sergio Perez might be in that boat, but I mean he's still got something, I suppose. But it's hard to look anywhere further than Bottas for 2 years. Put him in marquee signing. He's won races, driven next to Hamilton a couple of times, kind of pushed Hamilton. Just was never able to sustain that over a season.
Mm.
He's going to come in with an unbelievable amount of feedback. Partner him with Colton Herta and see where it goes. I'm not sold on Colton Herta, in all honesty. I think he's still a wee bit too crashy.
Agree.
I think he just kind of sometimes just loses the rag and fires the car in I hope it moves at its road. So I'm not. It's one of those ones where I wouldn't be surprised if he does go in, but I wouldn't be surprised if they went another way. It's that I wouldn't be like, oh my God, look what they've done. They've signed Herta, but I wouldn't be, oh my God, why did they not sign Herta? It's that like, all right, okay. So
Yeah, I think since you point like I said, that's sort of why I mentioned Pato O'Ward. I would rank him as a much better prospect than Colton Herta coming out of IndyCar into Formula One. I don't think either of them will get it, to be perfectly honest. Well, it's going to be a fascinating story all through the season because I think Sergio Perez, his father was pretty vocal over Christmas that he will be back. This is not the end. He's only taking a break. So is he saying that because he's been in touch with Cadillac? Is he just being a bit, kind of try to rile up some interest to keep his son in the conversation? Maybe. Personally, I don't think it's going to be Perez at all. I think Bottas of all the current or former drivers is maybe the best bet because Perez is now out of the sport. Bottas technically is not. He's still going to be in and around the Mercedes team. Crucially, he's going to be in and around conversations on how the cars next year are going to look, feel, and he'll almost certainly, I would imagine, be doing some simulator testing of next year's car as part of his work this year. That's invaluable, and that's something that Sergio Perez quite simply cannot offer them. And let's be honest, Cadillac are not going to need the money that Sergio Perez comes with. What I would love to see is a current or technically current driver like a Bottas or someone looking for a new challenge like a Gasly who could come in as a senior driver, and then whoever wins this year's Formula 2 championship. So you get some senior experience and you get some exciting, marketable new talent to bring through. I'm going to sound a little bit biased and say I really hope Alex Dunn wins Formula 2 this year, but that's my Irish bias. But I'd love to see that. I think it is more likely we see two experienced, older Formula One drivers or former Formula One drivers, a Bottas, a Perez, maybe Nico Hülkenberg pulling another weird move. But yeah, that's going to be very, very exciting. It is, I think, overall a good thing to have another team on the grid, especially another constructor, another engine manufacturer, another big car name on the grid. So next year we'll have Mercedes, Ferrari, follow me out. Honda are going to Aston, Cadillac, General Motors, Ford with Red Bull, technically. And who am I missing?
Aston Martin's got Honda.
Aston Martin has Honda. Who am I missing? Am I missing? There's five constructors next year? It's still a lot.
Ferrari, Mercedes, Honda,
Oh, Audi, six.
Audi.
Audi, yeah,
Audi.
the really big one. Yeah, so six constructors for 11 teams. That I don't remember the last time that happened. It's been a long, long time. So that's really, really exciting as well, and that's only good for, I think, just the future of Formula One and its sustainability and its future prospects into this next engine generation and beyond. So that is to come. We will definitely have more stories on that, I'm sure, almost every week for the next year. Other couple of quick news stories from the past couple of weeks before we get into it. The next big one, obviously, is that Adrian Newey has officially started working for Aston Martin as of, I think it was like the 2nd of March or something like that, the first Monday in March. So last week, he's officially an Aston Martin employee now. He's finished his gardening leave with Red Bull. And presumably, Amy, he's going to have next to no input on this year's car. I think that's pretty fair to say. But is this the start of the full turnaround for Aston Martin now that Adrian Newey's in? Is his diagram board just full of ideas for 2026 now?
I hope so, because I actually do believe Aston Martin they're quite a popular team on the grid. I know quite a few people who follow them. And all in all, I think as a team, they nearly got there. They have nearly got up to being a top competitive team. And I do genuinely think that they could get back there, and especially with Adrian Newey. I mean, when he went there, my first thought was Fernando Alonso world champion. And like that might be a bit delusional, but like I'm gonna hold out for it. Because he's one of my favorite drivers. But I guess I think he might push for a change in driver lineup.
Mm.
And that's why I'm gonna put out there that as he's in there, and we know he won't have a say much on the car this year, he will be looking at the car over the next year. And Max Verstappen, I don't think he'll stay at Red Bull. And I've just got a really weird feeling that he will go to Aston Martin.
Mm.
Part of me doesn't want him to, because the driver I want him to replace would be Lance Stroll. Therefore, Fernando Alonso will not get that world championship. But that driver lineup, I wouldn't mind seeing at all. I may become an Aston Martin fan.
So it's interesting you say that, because I have a similar opinion on this. Is that, well, Fernando Alonso signed his contract extension about 6 weeks before Adrian Newey was officially announced. There is not a snowball's chance in hell he did not sign that contract knowing that Adrian Newey is coming. And I'd also be shocked if that's not ironclad to say you're not kicking me out for anything. Lance goes before I do. Um, it would also surprise me if Adrian Newey, that he didn't just go there for a paycheck. If he wanted a paycheck, he should have gone to Cadillac or Audi or Ferrari, or just retired or stayed at Red Bull. He didn't go there for a paycheck. He went there because he wants to do something else. He wants to have another challenge, and he wants to, not that he isn't already, but firmly cement himself as the greatest Formula One designer in all of human history. And he wants to win a championship. And the fact of the matter is, he might win a drivers with Fernando or a Max in the car, but he hasn't a hope in hell of winning constructors. We saw last year that unless you have an utterly freakishly dominant car and driver like a Max and a Red Bull, one driver is simply not enough in modern Formula One to win a championship anymore. So, Coops, do you think Newey has a say in finally getting Lance to shimmy off to a Valkyrie and WEC?
I mean, he's certainly going to put his input in on it, because I don't think he's just an employee. I think
Mm-mm.
he's came in as kind of
It-
part of the
it's
management structure and
with shares in the company and everything, yeah.
shares. Yep. So he'll put his voice across. I mean, he's not going to have much of an impact in this season's car. I mean, go looking at testing and what I've heard about testing, you would think Aston would really like to hope that they could get something from Adrian Newey. And I think Adrian Newey's good enough that there might be some low hanging fruit, to steal a phrase from somebody else, in regards to, like, I mean, he might run his eye over the philosophy they've got just now and what they're doing, and be able to kind of point them in a direction, not completely influence it completely, but totally even, but in a sense say, look, maybe you should try and tweak this a wee bit, or have a look at that, or I've looked at the numbers and maybe we should look at this. Just things to get a few tenths here and there. Because it looks as if they're down at the back end, along with, in amongst the Sauber at the back. Then you're looking at Aston, and V-Carb or Racing Bulls down at that far end of the table. So, and we all know that Alonso wants to stay because he wants to drive an Adrian Newey car. So he's hanging about purely for that reason. So yeah, it's going to be interesting how things develop. I don't see much from Aston until probably the second half of the season, where Adrian might be able to have a quick look at the car and maybe get a wee bit of an influence in it, but it's not going to be up near the front.
Not this year.
Not this year, at least.
Mm. Well, we can hope that, as well, I'm an Aston Martin, well, I'm not an Aston Martin fan, I'm certainly a Fernando Alonso fan. And I'm an Adrian Newey fan, despite never having been a Red Bull fan, but he did design my favorite Formula One car of all time. Um, the McLaren from the 90s. So I would love to see him go off giving Fernando Alonso the championship that he never got in McLaren, and that he never got with Ferrari, and that he never got with Renault when he came back. That just never, 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 never. I think that would be a pretty fitting swan song for two of Formula One's biggest ever names. Moving on now to official breaking news as of 3 minutes ago, and I'm delighted to be able to say this because I have the worst luck for stuff like this. Oscar Piastri has announced that he has signed a new multi-year contract extension with McLaren. Literally just announced 3 minutes ago as we're filming on Tuesday evening. Um, McLaren and Oscar Piastri have agreed a new multi-year contract extension. The British team say will keep the Australian with them, quote, for the long term. Now, I can't find anywhere that says exactly how many seasons that is for, but I would be shocked if it's not anything less than 5. Amy, good news, bad news, big story on the eve of the season, right before his home race. What do you rate of this?
I think for me it's really good because I'm a McLaren fan and I really like Oscar. My only concern is I don't want this to end up a Lando situation because right now Lando's dedicated a lot of basically his whole career to McLaren.
Mm.
And I think Oscar Piastri will get a world championship before him.
Ooh.
And I just don't want, if they don't get a car in the next couple of years, that rules Lando out, really, until Lando goes to another team or whatever. If Oscar's stuck there and a new driver comes in and the same thing happens to him, I'm gonna be so annoyed. But
So is it a Lando situation or is it potentially a Max Verstappen into Red Bull situation?
it's it's a difficult one because multi-year contracts, it annoys me because they never tell you how long.
Mm.
And we've just got to kind of take a wild guess because a multi-year could be anywhere between 2 years or more. Like it's just a multi-year. Um I think for Oscar especially, it's good to confirm his future in Formula One because he's a good driver. He's had good seasons and he's really well liked. And just before his home race and the first race of the season as well, that's going to give him a lot of confidence, which is probably what he needs.
Mm.
And I definitely think Mark Webber is going to be pushing for that Oscar Lando rivalry because at the end of the day, they don't want a number one driver. They shouldn't have a number one driver.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Lando will be ecstatic about this. That's my only concern. I think it's from Lando's side, but as a driving pairing, arguably, I would say it's one of the best on the grid. So I don't mind it too much.
Well, it's interesting you say that because Coops was going to bring that on to you then from Lando's point of view. He's going into the season. He was saying literally in the press the other day that he's excited for this season. He has high expectations for this season. F1 Fantasy rank him as the most expensive driver on the grid because they obviously rate him the highest likelihood to win, well, in Australia at the very least this weekend. McLaren looked absolutely incredible in testing, the 30-second race distance gap to Ferrari. Is this going to upset Lando, or is this new 2025 championship challenging Lando Norris going to think of this and go, right, well, my first target is to smash you in your home race, mate?
I don't think he'll care. I think he's got his own things to deal with. He's got his own issues. He's got a long-term contract. He's had it for a few years. I think he probably knew that Piastri would probably get it. McLaren aren't Red Bull. They don't like to chop and change. You know, they've got themselves arguably probably the best pairing with potential and, current skill.
Mm.
So why would you want to upset the apple cart? I mean, who would you put in to replace them that is a marked upgrade on what they've already got without spending an obscene amount of money? So no, I don't think it makes any difference to Lando. I think he'll go out there, he'll do all the PR things, he'll be quite happy. And on one hand, it might actually help him because everybody's going to be looking at Piastri this weekend. It allows him to just knuckle down and get on with it and quietly just do his bit. So
Yeah.
no, don't think it's going to make any difference.
Yep, very, very good point. It certainly takes a little bit of the light off one side of the McLaren garage. Not only was Oscar obviously in his home race, but now he's got suppose that sort of weight of expectation of, well, they've trusted you for a lot longer, mate. You've got to go and show it now. I rate Oscar Piastri very, very highly. I'm a McLaren fan. That's not a secret. I agree. I think overall, I think they have the best driver potential pairing. I think in terms of just utter raw speed, all conditions perfect. I think Ferrari have them licked pretty comfortably. But I think car driver potential and opportunities for this year, I do think they have the strongest lineup, but it's going to be fascinating. I think those are the two teams to watch. One final piece of weird news just before we move on to the Australian Grand Prix preview. It was announced today, yesterday, that Alpine have announced Coops Aimee as their fourth reserve driver for this year. I can't possibly understand why. Anyone want to weigh in on this weird one? Amy, any thoughts on this one?
Not
Coops?
really.
Coops?
Have they signed that team principal from Sauber from a few years back who signed about 19 drivers for one season? I can't remember her name now. It's right in front of me. That was the whole when a driver, was it Chris Clean or another driver, turned up at the paddock with his racing gear on because he had a contract, but then he signed somebody else, and that was when it was a blue Sauber with a gold
Oh
on it. Do you
yes,
remember?
I do. I don't remember the name of the guy, but I do remember that happening. That was
Right.
possibly, yeah, maybe something like that has happened. But they,
I don't know, but this just smells of Briatore being Briatore. I just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
let's hire a few of them, and then like poor old Dune, who looks like a decent driver, who's now sitting in the car. You've got Colapinto standing there with his 3-year deal. There is no way that Colapinto signed a 3-year deal to be a reserve driver for 3 years.
Mm.
And then you've got this other guy who, from what I've heard, is pretty decent, and they've all agreed to sign contracts. I mean, what are they promising them?
Well, they've got
I don't get it. So,
they've got Franco Colapinto, and sorry, they are reserve drivers. It's not just like they've signed to their junior program or anything like that. They're all official Alpine reserve drivers. So if Doohan and Gasly get sick, they have four to choose from. They've got Colapinto, who has been signed to kick Jack Doohan out within 6 months. I think we're all pretty certain that is likely to happen, unfortunately for Doohan. They've got Paul Aaron, which I didn't realize. Talented
yeah,
Formula 2 driver. He's been quite good the last couple of years. And Rio Hirakawa, who
yeah,
I'll be honest, I don't know all that much about. And now they've got Coops Aimee, who I have watched in Formula 2, and on his day is okay. I don't rank him as Formula 1 quality, though, and I don't think I've never heard anybody speak of him in that way.
yeah.
Um, I don't know that they needed more than Colapinto. This, like you said, this screams of a bit of um, Flavio oddness.
Yeah, I mean, you have Colapinto to be your number one kind of reserve driver. I mean, at most you get a sim development driver that would spend a lot of time doing sim work to pass on to the main drivers and your reserve driver. After that, what is the reason for it? I don't know. Unless some of them have got some sort of commitments in other series. But even at
Poss
that, you don't really need to have 14 reserve drivers because two of them have got a couple of series to do. It's a bit weird.
Yeah, especially for a team that are very non-committed to Formula, so uncommitted to Formula One, they're not even bothered to build their own engines anymore.
Mhm.
Different for like Red Bull, who have two teams and a big junior program. Ferrari, they supply engines and supply drivers. Like obviously, Ollie Behrman last year went from Ferrari to deputize in Haas twice. Um, Fair enough in those situations. Alpine have nothing of the sort. They have no such connections with any other team. So anyway, just a bit of weirdness to because it wouldn't be a week in Formula One without something to question about Alpine's decision makings. Anyway, let's get into the fun stuff then. The Australian Grand Prix. At long last, it was 88 days or something like that since the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix as of Sunday this week, which was a quick enough turnaround actually now in retrospect, but it's a very early start. The race starts at 4 a.m. UK Ireland time this weekend. I'm a little bit lucky. I'm going to Poland on Saturday, so it's 5 a.m. for me on Sunday. I definitely planned that to be an hour closer. I could have gone a bit further, but anyway. So right off the bat, how excited are we for the 2025 Formula One season? Amy, you've got a massive grin on your face. We'll start with you.
I'm just so excited to finally get back on the screen. I think I've been going nuts, but lucky we've had a few sports that kept me going. But like, I'm just so excited to get the cars back out. I want to know. I think the start of the season is such an exciting one because nobody knows. Like, nobody can predict a lot of stuff because testing doesn't really mean a lot. Like, testing can change so much. So it's anyone's game on Sunday, and I love the fact it's back in Australia. I do. I like it starting back there, and I'm excited because I'm a huge Oscar Piastri fan. So I do want Oscar to do well at his home race. I am gutted though because Danny Rick is not there, but that's okay.
Well, Australian drivers have a historically rubbish record at their. I think was it Ricardo or Webber's best results was fourth each or something like that. Like they're awful. Ricardo was on the podium in his first race for Red Bull, but got disqualified. Technically in 2014. So yeah, can Oscar break that mold? Do you think he could even just get on the podium this weekend, Amy? After testing, that's sort of the expectation on McLaren, surely.
Yeah, I think he will be on the podium. I'll be surprised if he's not.
Yeah, so there's a lot to talk about this weekend. Obviously, the unknown around testing, like we said, times mean nothing. We don't know fuel loads. The one thing out of testing, that in terms of like pure pace, like lap times and stuff like that, people are having conniptions that the Alpine is 2 seconds faster than it was in qualifying last year. Yeah, on a track 30 degrees colder than it was in qualifying. Completely irrelevant. Fast-paced times, low fuel run times. What is more telling is those long run paces because it is over a whole race distance, 50 laps, 2 sets of tires. You know they're starting on full fuel and reducing from there. And as like for like as it could possibly have been, given the conditions were a bit different times a day, Lando Norris's long run was 32 seconds quicker than Charles Leclerc's. And no matter what way you cut it, and no matter how much tenth you add here or there for various different elements, that is pretty damn ominous, Coops, going into this first weekend of the year.
Oh, it's scary if the McLarens transfer that, stability and the speed from their long runs over at Bahrain to Australia. And we don't have a situation where the biggest problem we have for Norris is he puts the car in a great position and makes a stupid, silly wee mistake. And he done it too often last season, where he should have won in Canada. There's a couple other races that, he was up the front. Was Belgium one of them? I might be wrong. There was 2 or 3 at least.
Certainly Austria.
Where he was thereabouts. And, he has come out and said this year that he's going to cut back on the mistakes, and he's also going to, the Austria thing with Verstappen isn't going to happen again because he's looked back on it and he's like, I'm going to be more patient because he had the fastest car. And that was one of the biggest things about your Hamiltons of the world. They just knew, they're like, yeah, I've got this. I'll wait, I'll get my chance. And they all took it. He didn't. So
you saw the growth in him throughout the season. The immediate learning from Austria was Zandvoort, where he lost it at the start. And because I've literally just watched that episode of Drive to Survive, so it's a bit fresh in my memory. And his radio messages were, go get him, Lando, you've better tires. Yeah, I got him. And he missed him the first time. You'll get him next time. Yeah, it's cool, I got him. And he breezed past him on the next attack. He didn't push it too hard. So yeah, let's hope he can do it. The rumors now, though, Coops, are Ferrari were sandbagging. This is standard testing fare, but apparently multiple teams think Ferrari were sandbagging. What do you reckon?
I wouldn't be surprised.
You wouldn't be surprised if they were.
If they were just holding back just a wee bit, why not? If they are, they are. If they aren't, they aren't. It's. I don't know how much sandbagging actually does in testing. Bahrain was weird because it was colder than it should have been. It's not really a good track for testing anyway in terms of track layouts and things. If they are holding back that few tenths and it's going to be closer, then, more power to it. It's going to need something for us Brits or, UK watchers to wake ourselves up when we're up at the arse crack of dawn to watch it anyway. So, let's see how it goes. And it could all fall flat on its face. This is the thing. Like, we don't really know about Mercedes.
Nope.
We don't really know where Red Bull are.
Nope.
We know where McLaren are because
we know where McLaren should be.
Yeah, well, that's it. Everyone's saying they are the car to beat. and we've got a suspicion that Ferrari should be closer to McLaren than they actually are. This is what we kind of want coming into Australia. Is Australia going to be representative of the season? Probably not. It's not the greatest track in the world. And I think it got forgiven for quite a few years because it was the first race of the season, and we're all just happy the fact it was the first race of the season. And then when it got moved away from the first race of the season, we actually realised it's a pretty crap
Not
track.
that great. Yeah.
Yes. You know, one year I think they had one on-track pass the whole race. Not a good idea. So we will, you know, it's just good that we're coming into the start of a season, and for the first time in a few years, where we just don't really quite know where everyone's going to be, other than the fact that Sauber are going to be about 3.5 days behind everybody else.
That's very true. That one is pretty much nailed on. I feel really bad for poor Gabriel Bortoleto, because I suppose on one hand there's no pressure on him, but on the other hand he might finish last in his first season. Now, I actually think he'll outperform Nico Hulkenberg, but that's a story for another day. But yeah, so that's interesting. The dark horses, though, and the sort of ones that haven't been getting much attention are Mercedes, because McLaren have the headlines. They looked pretty comfortable in testing. Lando looks cool as a cucumber. Ferrari have all the damn press around them, especially the British press, let's be honest, because Lewis Hamilton did something. He was like, they all lost their minds. Lewis is 1.8 seconds quicker than Charles and Fiorano. Yeah, and the next day Charles was 2.5 seconds quicker than Lewis, and they didn't mention that at all. So they're getting all the plaudits. Red Bull look not great out of testing, and that car now looks like it's gotten to the point where even Max is struggling with its stability. So where do Mercedes sit in that? Because they had a good test. They look pretty good at testing.
I'm quite quietly confident with Mercedes, and I'm not a huge Mercedes fan at all, to be honest. So this is a very unbiased opinion then, I guess. But it's definitely, I do think they got a shot, and I do think George Russell could have a podium. I think he's well. I want Kimi Antonelli to have one, but because it's his first sort of big moment, I don't know if the pressure will get too much, and I think he might sit like 5th or 4th. But I do think George Russell has a really good shot at a podium here, and I think if Mercedes play this season right, Lewis Hamilton might just be regretting that move.
Yeah, I that's something I've been hearing a lot about. Okay, fair enough. He did it with Mercedes, and he moved the year before they got really good. And there's potentially a shout that whatever Fred Vasseur showed him was for 2026, which sounds more realistic. But yeah, if he gets beaten by George, especially if he gets beaten by Kimi this year, it's just not a good look for him at all. Good luck for Mercedes, though. Toto Wolff will be next season of Drive to Survive will be hilarious.
He'll have a field day. I think especially with Mercedes at the minute, I think with Lewis Hamilton leaving, I think they didn't have a great season last season. In the sense that I just think the whole team morale was down, and I think they are going to look into the season like it's a whole new era for Mercedes, and I think other teams need to keep an eye on them, because they did kind of go under the radar. There was hardly any press on them anyway, really, and I do think they have a shot, and they're definitely not a team to rule out. So I don't know why people kind of have before we've even got to the first race. But it'll be interesting to see where they slot in, because I think there's just going to be a lot of fighting to get to the top in the first race. And I think, but we also need to know that the results of this first race could mean absolutely nothing if we do get a really excited, if all cars on the grid are actually looking at decent pace, and you could have a really exciting season.
Well, that's the hope this year, isn't it? Is that it becomes a little bit more like a Formula 2, and if the cars are in and about a margin of each other, then more than it has done a long time, the season will come down to the actual drivers, which just hasn't happened in a while, properly on that big scale, multiple teams.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well it's gonna be way more exciting for the fans. I think, especially now Drive to Survive has come out, we've had loads more fans come through the fact that Drive to Survive is on Netflix and stuff, and I think it's time to give them a season that is really exciting, because I feel like they've not experienced it. If they followed from Drive to Survive from the start, they've not really seen a really exciting Formula 1 season besides going all the way back to 2021, really. So, but even then, that was still
It's
between
two drivers just crashing into each other
yeah,
for a year.
yeah, exactly. So I guess I'm excited because I do want it to be a bit more like Formula 2. I want the cars to have a bit more of a level playing field in the sense that we get that excitement. Like it could be anyone's race every weekend, and I want that excitement this year.
Mm. Yep, me too. So the other big talking point coming into this weekend, of course, we mentioned a couple of times in previous podcasts leading up to the season, is new faces. So last year, obviously, for the first time in Formula One history, we had no changes of the grid between season to season, 2023 to 2024. There's a lot of changes mid-season, and a lot of changes post-season. We have six new drivers, technically, officially classed this year as the class of rookies doing their first full season. So they vary, I suppose, is the fairest way of putting it in terms of where the cars are likely to sit. I think it's perfectly fair to say that Kimi Antonelli and or Liam Lawson will probably score the most points of the six newbies this year. But in terms of like all things considered, with their cars, the positions, the expectations on them, and where they should finish, Coops, who are you most excited to see this year, and who do you think is going to have, all things considered, the best year of the six newbies for this year?
I do like Bortoleto, and I think there'll be. I think Bortoleto's in the best place because he's in a car that's awful,
Mm.
and everybody knows the car's awful. Audi are so far behind on where they should be for next season, it's unreal. So he's going to have a great year because it's a year of zero expectation. Go out there and enjoy it, and people around F1, especially a lot of our fans, you can still see when a driver's good, even in a car that's not good.
Mm.
So I'm interested to see how that'll work out. I'm kind of interested to see how Berman will do now that it's not just super sub, that he's now a driver. I mean, he's not going to do a Nick De Vries because Nick De Vries was signed on one race. He's had a couple of races. Nick De Vries was never going to do what Berman did in that Ferrari at Saudi. So, it'll be interesting. But yeah, probably Bortoleto and Berman. And, I'll keep an eye on them all, to be honest. I think the one that I've got the least kind of interest in and really following is probably Liam Lawson. More because he's done quite a few races. So I'm at that point when I'm like, yeah, well, you're in the point, so you kind of should be.
Do you think
you're
he's got
fourth.
the most pressure on him?
No, Doohan has.
Oh, okay, yeah, just because of
Right,
Colapinto waiting in the wings.
Yeah, Doohan's already been kind of told he's getting sacked before he's been told he's getting sacked. He's not even turned a real. He's not even had a race yet, and that's a horrible situation for a driver who has talent, but he's went into a situation that, I mean, he can't control it. That's the worst part. All these decisions and moves have been made before he's had a chance to prove himself, and sometimes even standing there, and he could be the next coming of Verstappen. And Alpine might not even notice it because it seems like there's an element of stubbornness around what they're wanting to do with their drivers. That they've kind of already made their mind up that they've made the wrong choice with doing, so they're getting things ready to ship him out at the first opportunity. So yeah, I think he's the one that's and I mean if he finds that car in third or second, some sort of weird ass shenanigans over the weekend and gets himself right up into the podium spots, or even within touch of distance of podium spots. That's he has to do that kind of miraculous driving pretty much all season before they actually go, do you know what, you're fine.
Yeah, I think this weekend, like again, testing is testing, but the one thing you can compare like to like is how Alpine reacted to testing this year versus testing last year, where the car was heavy, so heavy that it wasn't allowed to have any damn paint on it. This year, it's very damn colorful. So right off the bat, it's a small thing, but that actually that screams a lot in Formula One terms. That last year they'd no paint, this year they've been able to paint it. They've got their shit together. The car looked a little bit more stable. Gasly looked pretty happy with it. And it's reckoned from all the podcasts and all the journalists and all the pundits and all that it's between them and Williams in terms of that best of the rest, fight for fifth kind of thing. Fifth of the constructors. So that's points. That's 8th to 10th. in this race. And if they're in around that, if he gets in, if it ends up being, Gasly, Sainz, Albon, Doohan, that looks bad for Doohan. But if it's Gasly, Sainz, Doohan, Albon, that looks good for Doohan. As far as I see it, he needs to be within that margin of reasonability of Gasly, as they all sort of do. But I think, like you said, especially for Doohan. Amy, what do you reckon? Who are you most looking forward to seeing out of the rookies, and who do you think is going to have the best and hardest time of it this year?
I think I'm looking forward to see Bortoleto just because I really like his driving style. I really have enjoyed watching him grow as a driver, so I'm really excited to see him in Formula One. I kind of have similar feelings in terms of Doohan. I feel like he's not really been given a fair draw.
Mm.
There's, I think, excess. It doesn't help that the media is basically saying that he's out of a seat before he's even driven in the car. And I don't think it's really fair on him. But hopefully he'll take it more in his stride and maybe prove that he deserves a spot. Maybe that's how he'll look at it. But I also think he may go under pressure. For Kimi Antonelli, I actually think he might be one to watch. I'm just scared I don't know if he's too young. Too young. I don't know what it is about him. I'm just really worried that maybe it was too soon to go into Formula One. But if he can pull it off this season, there's a star on your hands there. I will say that. Liam, though, I'm not a huge fan of his, but I'm quite a big fan of Red Bull. So for Red Bull's sake, I hope he does well. To be honest, he has to do better than Perez. I mean, anyone really could at this point. So that's not hard. That's not a hard challenge. But with his aggression, I don't know how that will react with Max, because I feel like they've got both a bit of an aggressive driving style. And if Red Bull do have a dominant car again, Liam's not going to be one to move over. Especially, he's young, he's hungry, and I like that about him. I don't know how that dynamic will work, because we all know Red Bull are definitely going to prioritize Max, but it'll be up to Liam what he does on track. But yeah, I guess it's a really exciting season though, because I just love the fact that we've got so many rookies. And I honestly hope they do have a good season, because it'll push for more teams to put younger drivers into the seats and kind of get those younger drivers that have been waiting in the stands for ages for a drive. Maybe it gives them a chance. Maybe more teams will take risks if a lot of these rookies pull off.
Yep, I think so too. I that's a really, really good point as well. It's that take the chance on the young drivers, because, I mean, historically it's gone usually quite well. Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, Max Verstappen, Fernando Alonso, all these young drivers who came in were taking a chance on it, a big team partnering an established driver. All of them blew them away and went to win championships. All of them. Um, is this class of rookies going to win championships? Possibly not. I like Gabriel Bortoleto a lot. I think he's really, really good. I think your point to Kimi Antonelli is an interesting one. I think because Mercedes have flown under the radar a bit, he's gotten to fly under the radar a bit. None of the story has been around him, despite, Netflix doing their very, very best to suggest that he's the next thing. Him and George have, going to fight over Lewis's dominance or anything like that. It's ridiculous. Personally, I don't see it yet. I look forward to seeing it, but the first time he sat in a Formula One car, he was quick and then he binned it through absolutely no fault other than his own. When he didn't need to, it was practice. I think you're right. I think it's too soon. I think he's too young. I think he's too small. Literally, I think he's too small. I think Yuki Tsunoda had the same problem and he had to bulk up. I think Kimi is quite literally too small, especially for a front-running Formula One car, which it will be. And again, just that jump straight into the what Toto Wolff thinks will be a winning car. What Toto Wolff will expect to be podiums and wins, and will be disappointed it's not. George Russell, you had the reigning GP3 and then GP2 champion, and he dumped him in a Williams for 3 years. I just can't wrap my head around how last year they had the opportunity, put Kimi Antonelli in the Williams, do exactly what George did, but put him in a better situation than George was in. Let him learn off a better driver than George ever got to with, Alex Albon, and take Carlos Sainz for 2 years. I still can't wrap my head around that. I hope Kimmy can do it. He seems like a cool customer, but I think that pressure is gonna that's just so much on him. Coops, where do you think Kimmy Antonelli will finish this season?
Well, he's not finishing the best rookie.
You think Lawson will outdo him?
Lawson potentially, yeah. I think Lawson's probably the only one that will on machinery alone, but as you say, there's a lot going in. I mean, the boy's fast, according to Mercedes. He's really fast. He's got a lot to learn. As you say, he's quite a slight build. There's a lot of forces going through a driver, especially on long runs. You know, it's a very much an unknown quantity, and his total wolf just been like, well, look, we know we lost Hamilton, but we didn't really need them anyway. Look, we've got Antonelli. It's kind of that hoping for the fact that he is the next Verstappen or he is the next, world superstar that's going to take over Formula One. I just don't see it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. I just don't see it. It was a bit like when Mick Schumacher came in, people were like, oh, it's going to be amazing. I'm like, where? How? When? I was never sold on Mick Schumacher, ever.
Mm.
And eventually everybody cottoned on to it. But, when you see someone like, when Piastri came in, you just thought, oh, there's something.
Something about him.
Yeah, there's an indescribable thing when you see a driver who's just good.
Yeah.
It's like, I remember, I'm old enough to remember when Fernando Alonso debuted in Formula One. And I was like, oh, even when I was young, I was like, oh, there's something about this guy.
Mm.
There's something like, probably one of the best drivers to not win a championship was Juan Pablo Montoya.
Mm-hmm.
If he'd stuck out with Formula One, he would have won a championship. When he came in, part of it was his attitude because he didn't care that Michael Schumacher was there at the height of his fame. He's like, I don't care. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. But Antonelli doesn't have that. Everyone else is saying he has that, but I'm not seeing it. And maybe I'm missing something, but there's something that's I'm just not getting it.
Well, you're not the only one. I remain to be. There's no doubt the kid is fast. Like I saw him in Formula 2 last year, and I watched Formula 2 all year. And he and Behrman had issues with the Prema throughout the first half of the year. Fair enough, the team seemed to be struggling with those new cars. But once they got it together, like he was quick, he was making overtakes, but he was also making silly mistakes. And yeah, okay, he's a kid. He makes silly mistakes, but we always talk about like do certain drivers deserve the step up from Formula 2 to Formula 1, and those who don't, why did they not get it? And interestingly, the one driver we haven't spoken about at all, and sort of I think falls into this, is Isaac Hadjar, who was runner-up to Bortoleto only just. Like Bortoleto just pipped him at the end. It was what, like 6 points or something? It was really close. And yet he is totally unrated. I personally I don't rate him all that much. He had a good team around him, and his qualifying was okay, and he was in positions to score points all the damn time. I don't see him outscoring Yuki Tsunoda. I think he's one of those, like, he got the step up really like over the drivers that haven't in the past. You look at your Robert Schwartzmans, your Callum Islets, there's loads of drivers. Oscar Piastri sat in the sideline. Felipe Drugovich is still on the sidelines. And I just think Kimi, I think he's above that level, but he's not he's not Oscar Piastri, he's not George Russell and Lando Norris, or even Alex Albon, who just have that extra thing. And even though all those drivers I mentioned, of all those drivers who came in at a young age, only Lewis Hamilton went straight in his rookie season into a top car. Fernando Alonso came in a shit car and vanished for a year and then came back. Sebastian Vettel went in what was supposed to be a crap car. It was a crap, the BMW and then the Toro Rosso. He just happened to win a race in them. Who else did we mention? Like I said, George Russell was in Williams.
Webber was in a Minardi.
Weber was in a minority. Max Verstappen got to go and crash left, right, and centre in a Toro Rosso for a year and a bit. I just don't. I think this is just Toto Wolff playing I have to do something. I need the media attention. I haven't won a championship in years. Look at me, look at me. Stop looking at Christian Horner. I think it's just a wild overreaction, because any other reasonable person would have looked at Carlos Sainz and say, be in my car, I'll pay you all the money.
Of course, especially for a couple of years. Yep. In a Mercedes with George Russell. Like, it's like I say, there's a snap judgment there. And there's an air of stubbornness around Wolff. It's that old adage of You know, I support Kilmarnock Football Club, and we're not going through a particularly great season. And there's question marks around our manager, and it's like he's trying to be smart when a situation when it doesn't need to be smart.
Mm.
You just simplify it. You know, we're not having a great season. He's playing players out of position, and it's like go back to basics. Be simple. It's play football, and it's the same with Formula One. And in this situation, like Wolf should have looked at what we had, right? So we have an unknown rookie who's fast but crashy and a bit, but he probably has something in it. The data's shown he's pretty decent. We've got Carlos Sainz,
Proven race winner and the only person
proven
to beat
race
Max
winner.
Verstappen in 2023.
Yep, who knows what he's doing. There's, you know, and it could there have been a conversation? I don't think there was. The way that the Total Wolf went on, it was Antonelli. It was always going to be Antonelli, and maybe he's doing that to cover. Maybe he's doing that to say it. And there was some quiet conversations, but in this modern iteration of Formula One, quiet conversations have a tendency to eventually come out.
Mm.
So I don't think there was ever any conversation with Carlos Sainz. And as you say, it's a pretty stupid thing to do. You're kind of setting the kid up to fail in one respect. You're setting him up to hopefully be good, but there's a higher chance he's going to fail.
But there's also just an unbelievably steep learning curve for him. He was barely in Formula 2. He wasn't in it for long enough to make any sort of difference. He certainly wasn't fighting at the front long enough for it to count. Like, again, you look at George Russell, he won GP3, he went straight into GP2, and he won that as well. Same with Oscar Piastri. He won F3, he went straight into F2, he won that as well. And he had that momentum and he had that, right, I'm ready to go. And then both of them just sort of had to flounder for a bit. Kimi hasn't done that. He hasn't done that sharp edge. Oh, but yes, he won some Formula 4s and stuff like that. But who hasn't who's come into Formula 1? I'm sorry, I don't mean to like, obviously, I haven't won any Formula 4. I'm sitting here behind my keyboard saying this. But this is Formula 1. Supposed to be. They're the 20 best drivers in the world and the billionaire's son. 19 best drivers in the world and the billionaire's son. But Formula 4 is not a marker for Formula 1. Even Max, like all the questions around Max Verstappen was, it's way too soon. He at least was not put into the top car until he had got a little bit crashy out of his system and proved his worth, at least, and shown them the spark and showed that he could do it in Formula 1. Same with Fernando Alonso, same with Sebastian Vettel. Lewis Hamilton was a risk that Ron Dennis took and it paid off. I just don't know. But Kimi Antonelli is not Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton is like the rest of them. He dominated his junior categories. His 2006 GP2 championship was spectacular. If you ever want to see how good Lewis Hamilton was as a kid, I'm sure most of our listeners have probably already watched this. Go watch Turkey 2006 for GP2. It's on YouTube. It was a masterpiece. He was such an incredibly talented kid, so it was right to take that risk on him. Kimi Antonelli has not done that to that level, not even remotely close. He just hasn't. And yeah, I think you're right. I think he's setting him up for failure, and it's that stubbornness because there's no way if a conversation happened with Carlos Sainz, he didn't say, "Yes, I'll have your seat for 2 years, please." And you can even put a contract that if Kimi dominates in Williams for a year, I'll feck off.
Yeah,
I just don't see why Carlos Sainz would have said no to that ever. But
yeah,
sorry, also the steep learning curve is he comes into this car that he's no real experience with other than binning it on lap 2, learns it for the whole year, and then next year steps into essentially a completely different category again. There's just so much pressure in what should be a top winning team. So much pressure. It's too much pressure for an 18-year-old, I think. I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he proves us all wrong. For all we know, he's going to win on Sunday and will look really stupid. But I've there's so much pressure on a kid.
I mean, for me, it's opinion. I just don't know what it is that I'm missing out on. But like you say, it's that gut thing. And I mean, he might win on Sunday. It wouldn't change my opinion because there's a lot of drivers out there that have won a race here or there. Gasly's won a couple. You know, I think is Ocon won one at least.
Ocon's won one. Gasly's
Yeah,
won one.
you know. So Gasly did look good.
Pastor
And
Maldonado won a race.
yeah, I mean, we all know how good the driver that man was. Jesus. You know, Lance Stroll came close to winning one.
Yes, he did. Twice.
So, you know, it's a lot easier to win a race than be a contender for multiple championships and being seen as a front runner. You know, And you could go in through all your formulas and won everything. I think Stoffel Van Dorn done brilliant in
Everything.
F3, F2, won everything, came to Formula One. And yes, okay, the McLaren was an absolute dog, but he didn't set the world alight. Nobody looked at
Mm-mm.
him and went, yeah, he's a great driver. He's just in the wrong machinery. It just didn't click.
Mm.
And as you say, there's so many things going against that man. And you part of me would have liked to have seen Toto Wolff kind of deflect away from Antonelli, but not big it up as much as he's done. Like,
That's part of it as well, isn't it? That he's bigged it up. Amy, I'll bring you in on this. What do you think of Toto? Just like again, just I know we're spending a bit of time on Kimi, but it's going to be a talking point this weekend if he doesn't perform, and it's all come from Toto Wolff.
I think he's taken a risk. I think he wanted his own Max Verstappen.
Mm.
And if it plays off, he will run with it. He'll be like, see, I told you this would work. But if it doesn't, it's just, I think he's taking risks because he compares himself so much to Red Bull. I've never seen such a big, like, he cares so much about what the
Mm.
media thinks about him. I think the last few years have been tough, and I think it's showing. But I do genuinely think that Kimi does have a chance this year. It was a rash decision. I do not believe Carlos Sainz should ever have got dropped from Ferrari. So I think Carlos Sainz even being dropped from Ferrari was bizarre, but I don't know why he didn't go to Mercedes. And my only thought would be that Toto Wolff already had his eyes on Kimi and wanted this plan to all go through. But he wants his own Max Verstappen, and he's going to try his very best to make Kimi the next Max. And I can't see that happening.
Mm. The question also arises is, okay, I'm not saying that George is as good as Max, but he has him. He has his Max. He has the kid whose raw talent came through, won everything, plied his trade in the crap team, and was stepped up to the big team. It's not George Russell's fault that he was put up a year too late, because realistically, he should have been put up. He shouldn't have spent that third year in Williams. They should have dropped Bottas a year earlier, but they didn't want to risk Lewis not winning that title. It's the only reason I've ever been able to think why he wasn't promoted earlier. Because if he'd been promoted into that all conquering Mercedes, I don't know if he'd have beaten Lewis, but he'd have certainly given him a run for his money. And it probably would have been a three-way fight for that title. And maybe we'd have had three stacks on top of each other in Monza instead of just the two.
mhm.
But he has his talented mid-20s leader of the team, super excitable, championship quality, champion winning quality driver. I don't know why he needs to put that on the head of an 18-year-old.
It's interesting, to be honest, his thoughts behind this. I think, but if it does play off, I will give credit to him for that. It'll put Merc back where it needs to be, but he also can't replace, like, I don't think George or Kimi are really replacing Lewis. Like,
Mm-mm.
I think it's a really harsh thing to ask, and I think the only person that I could potentially say is that George is probably the one that's more stepping into Lewis's shoes
Yep,
than Kimi is, because I think the only thing I will say is that Kimi is coming in and replacing Lewis Hamilton, but really George Russell's replacing Lewis Hamilton and he's replacing George, and we really do need to look at it like that, because I've seen
exactly.
so much things online like, how can you replace like a 7-time world champ with an 18-year-old, and I'm just like, but they're not
Can't.
like like they're not they're replacing George in a way. They just, like, they have to fill that seat, and I think
Mm.
George will step up to that number one driver. And I'm hoping they've not, because if Kimi doesn't do well and this is a bad season, because I actually do think Kimi would be a good Formula One driver. I just don't think now is his right time. And what would be so painful is that he has the worst season ever and then loses his shot at Formula One full stop because he went up a year too early.
Yep. And you look at how many drivers, Stoffel Van Dorn, as Coops mentioned, is a good example of that. Alex Albon got lucky that he was brought back, but that happened to him too. He was lucky that someone else took a chance on him, but he got that promotion too early and it ruined his career. It nearly ruined his career completely. It certainly ruined his career with Red Bull. Again, Pierre Gasly got promoted arguably too early, and both of them were in Formula One already, and there's still the call that they were promoted too early. Danny Kvyat, Brendan Hart, like the amount of they're usually Red Bull drivers. Um, like the only driver you could say that Mercedes promoted at the exact right time is Valtteri Bottas, actually. And they just they had to do that, but they done it right with him in that they put him in Williams for a couple of years, and then he was ready because Williams had been up and around and he got a podium, I think, with Williams, and he was ready to take that step up. George was ready a year earlier than he was put up. Kimmy has nothing on him. But you're right, he is replacing George. He's not replacing Lewis. Um, and we will at least parrot that line correctly. Like I completely agree with you. I think that's the absolute right way to look at it. George Russell has replaced Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes, not Kimi Antonelli. Still not a like for like though. So that is it's going to be really really interesting race. Like I said, it's a very very early start for the Australian Grand Prix this weekend. Qualifying and the race, if I'm not wrong, start at 4 a.m. UK Ireland time. So set your alarms now. Plan to either not go out on Saturday or be out all of Saturday. Because it's going to be a very, very, very early one, and we wouldn't have it any other way, would we? Before we finish up, then, sorry, let me just confirm the times. They are local. Let me just get, yeah, my time. There we go. So, practice one is at 1:30 on Friday morning. Practice two is at 5 a.m. Can't imagine I'm going to be awake for them. Practice three, again, 1:30 on Saturday morning. Qualifying is at 5 a.m. on Saturday morning. And the race is at 4 a.m. on Sunday morning. But the best thing about Australia being the first race is it's never that bad again.
No.
Get it out of the way straight away. Don't have to adjust your calendar again. So let's get into the really, really fun bit, predictions. So I'm going to ask you both for your poll, your winner and your podium, and then we're going to put a fiver on who's winning the championship. So, Coops, pole position for this weekend and your podium, please.
Oscar Piastri, it will be for pole. The podium will be Norris, Hamilton, Piastri.
Ooh, interesting.
And my
Who's your fiver going on?
my fiver. Okay, here we go. Fiver for Lewis Hamilton. Let's do it.
Oh, oh, that'll make for a very, very clickbaity Instagram video. Thank you for that. Aimee, your turn. Pole, your podium, and your fiver for the champion.
Okay, I'm gonna put Oscar Piastri as winning. I'm gonna do poll later. So Oscar Piastri wins. I'm gonna say wins Melbourne. He's gonna break the curse. He's gonna do well. George Russell in P2, and then I'm gonna put Charles Leclerc P3, and then pole position. I'm gonna put Charles Leclerc.
Okay.
And
And
then
who's your fiver going on for the championship?
okay, this is really tough now. I'm gonna. Do you know what? I'm gonna check it on Oscar.
Oscar for champion.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's a
okay.
very wild one, but I'm gonna do it.
And who do you think, both of you, Coops, who do you think is going to win the constructors? You have 10 choices this year, you'll have 11 next year.
I think McLaren will probably still get the constructor. As a team, I think they're solid. I think it'll be really close between them and Ferrari. And I'm going to put it out now. I was thinking about it. If Hamilton does win, I'll get a Ferrari tattoo.
Wow, I will definitely have to just save this video everywhere. I'm gonna remind you of this every time Lewis doesn't win a race this year.
Yep, I'm doing a Zach Brown.
I'm not seeing any British bias here, by the way. Aimee, who's your constructor champion this year?
It's Italian bias.
It's either gonna go McLaren or Ferrari.
Mm.
I think it's gonna be between them two. I'm gonna go with my team, McLaren, in a very biased way. Part of me does think it'll go Ferrari, but I'm gonna say McLaren.
Okay. My pole position, I'm gonna put Charles Leclerc on pole this weekend. But my top three is going to be Lando, Charles, George Russell. I don't think Oscar's going to break the curse. And I think that McLaren is just quicker over a race from what we've seen so far. But I firmly believe, and I'll sing this to all of heaven, Charles Leclerc is the best qualifier in Formula One by a million miles. He is the quickest driver over one lap comfortably. So I'll put him on pole, but I don't think he's going to win the race. I think Lando will pip him. Constructors champions, I'm going to go Ferrari, and my girlfriend would love me for that, but I feel like I'm betraying myself. But I should probably change my background color away from the orange. I do think Ferrari are going to win it this year. I think I don't think Lewis will beat Charles, but I think together they will beat McLaren. Um, over the course of the season, I think the thing that Lewis will bring to that team is that no bullshit attitude that I think Charles Leclerc will pick up on immediately. Lewis is not going to sit there while, oh, we're checking. Lewis will be in the pits, and if they're not ready for him with a set of tires that he wants, or he'll tell them to F off if he wants to stay out. The more he does that, the more Charles will do that. Let's be fair, Lewis is almost always right when he makes his calls, and Charles will pick that up quickly, and the two of them working like that will win the championship. They're also the most expensive driver pairing in history. If they don't win the championship, that just looks really bad, I think. So, a bit of extra pressure for them. But drivers champion, I'm going to give it to Lando Norris. I think this is his year. I think he looks fitter, which is impressive to say because he was fit as hell last year. He looks like he's had a good winter. He looks like he's bulked up a little bit more. He looks calm as ever. I think that win in Abu Dhabi was the perfect thing. Nico Rosberg did ready for this season, end the season, have your training, get straight back into it. So I'm going to put Lando Norris to win the Drivers' Championship, but Ferrari to win the Constructors. And Coops, that still means you have to get a tattoo.
If Ferrari win the Constructors or Lewis Hamilton wins, I will get a Ferrari tattoo.
What sort of, like a Ferrari shield or something weird?
Yeah, I get the shield. Yeah, and it won't be on a face before anyone says it's not going in a forehead, it's not going in a cheek.
I reckon we actually get Facebook to decide
what your tattoo is going to be.
Not where, not where. No. No. Okay.
I think you should get like a Siamese Enzo Ferrari and Fred Vasseur or something weird like that.
Oh, come on. This is turning into something from the horror movies, like The Thing. Like,
this was your idea.
Molding into something like you want Fred Vasseur and Lewis Hamilton to kind of slide out of a Ferrari car or something.
Yeah, something really weird. So stay tuned for that because come Abu Dhabi, we will be deciding what happens there.
Yeah, like Facebook or Everything F1 decides Coops' tattoo. You know, we'll come up with some designs. I'm going for a tattoo this week so I can speak to that tattoo artist and
see what you can do.
Well, there's some ideas.
There we go. Do feel free to leave your Coops tattoo suggestions in the comments now, wherever you're listening. We will take note of them. We'll refer back to this later in the season, if or when Ferrari do manage to win it. That'll do it for it. That is our first race preview of the season. The Formula One season is finally back. Like I said, it was a long but retrospectively pretty quick turnaround of the winter break, and it is finally back this weekend. Australian Grand Prix starts at 4 a.m. this Sunday, UK Irish time. So like I said, set your alarms for that, and we'll get the season underway. It's going to be an exciting one. Thank you very, very much for joining us this evening. I've been Seán, joined by Coops. Thank you, Coops.
Thank you.
And thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
We have been Everything F1. Don't forget to check us out on all socials. You find us at Johnny F1. If you've been watching on YouTube, thank you very, very much. We're looking to grow this channel now throughout this year, so we have lots of new plans coming for YouTube this year. So if you are watching over there, do please like and subscribe. And if you're not watching or listening there, do please head over to Everything F1 on YouTube, all one word, and like and subscribe there as well, if you would not mind. Do also check out our fantastic sponsors, theraceworks.com. If you want to deck yourself out in the best F1 merch ahead of this season, check out theraceworks.com for all of your F1 and motorsport merch needs. Use code EF1 at checkout for 10% off site-wide. Thank you, as always, to the Raceworks for their continued sponsorship of the show throughout this season coming. I've been Seán. Thank you all very, very much for listening, and enjoy the first race of the season. Goodbye.
Bye.